Welcome to Business Talk with me, Michael Avery, right here on businesstech.co.za. Now, Amazon's arrival in the country back in May of 2024, just over 2 years ago, was perhaps more slow burn than shock and awe. For 2 years, it set about building things like selection, sellers, fulfillment, and customer experience. Then in June this year, things suddenly got, I think, a lot more serious. Amazon launched Prime in South Africa at 59 Rand a month or 399 Rand a year. Barely 3 weeks later, staged the country's first ever Prime Day, running locally from the 23rd to the 29th of June. So it's just concluded, and it matters because Prime Day isn't really about discounted air fryers and noise-cancelling headphones, although that's what draws the eyeballs. It's one of the most powerful parts of the Amazon flywheel. Use the deals to recruit members, use Prime to build loyalty, and then turn those occasional shoppers into habitual ones. And it's what's seen Amazon grow into the world's most powerful retailer. But it's not entering a vacuum. Just days ago, we saw Takealot reporting more than $1 billion in annual revenues and its first full-year adjusted operating profit. So the real question is whether Prime Day was simply a successful sale or whether it marks the moment that Amazon began to change the competitive dynamics of South African e-commerce. To unpack that, it's a great pleasure to welcome Robert Koen, who's a Managing Director of Amazon Sub-Saharan Africa. Robert, welcome back to Business Talk. Let's just start with the simplest question. I'm going to ask you to resist the temptation to give me only adjectives. How successful was South Africa's first Prime Day?
Michael, we really have been humbled, genuinely humbled by the response that we've received. A huge number of signups to Prime. We've also converted, Prime Video subscribers into the program as well. But over and above that, lots of new members signing up, seeing the value that they get from this single membership where you're getting the free, fast delivery. And it's unlimited. You can use it as many times a day as you want. And that's getting great traction. So, really pleased with the response, really pleased with the feedback from our customers.
Were there any numbers when you looked at it, be it maybe new Prime members or the average basket size or anything like that, that when you looked at it, you sat back and thought, well, South Africa has really surprised us here?
I think the biggest surprise has been in the repeat purchase. This is one of the metrics that we track is, how often our customers, they try it out, do they come back, and how often do they come back? And we've really been, the numbers in South Africa have been unusual and unusually high compared to other store launches around the world. And that means that they like the selection, they like the great value for money. And I think most of all, we're getting great feedback about the delivery experience, just the reliability and the predictability of that delivery. We do what we say we're going to do, and you're going to get it. If we say it's going to be there tomorrow, it's going to be there tomorrow. And customers love that.
Yeah, I think that's so important when it comes to e-commerce in South Africa, that last mile and getting that right. I guess the obvious question is also when you look through the sales, what sold? And yes, I actually do want to know whether we're a nation of air fryer buyers still. Is it Lego? I'm a father. I'm always looking for a good Lego deal. Was it the noise cancelling headphones? What did you learn about the South African online shopper through this first Prime Day?
Yeah, I think, look, obviously we get the traditional, lots of electronics, lots of, the typical things that you'd expect. So Samsung Galaxy A6, has been a big seller. We've had Pokemon. I'm just looking at some of the list here. Pokemon Mega Evolution Chaos Rising booster cards. And then another interesting one was the Dunlop Pro paddleball. You get a 3-pack of the balls. Those have been selling, very fast. But I think sort of at a more macro level, I think what we are seeing is traditionally a lot of South Africans have looked to these online stores for some of the higher involvement categories, whether it's electronics, TVs, as you say, air fryers. But what we're definitely seeing is also a big uptake in what we term everyday essentials. So customers coming on, and with Prime, it makes it so easy to just, wow, I need firelighters, out of firelighters. bring me firelighters. 2 hours later, oh boy, we're out of tomato sauce. Can you bring me my favorite brand of tomato sauce? Or, any of those things. So getting into this regular, frequent pattern. And it's just, I think it just makes South African shoppers' lives that much easier, where you can, when you need it, you can get it, and you can get it same day or next day, and, paying for the delivery, which I think is really appreciated by so many.
And as I said, I'm a father of two lovely daughters, and we were shopping over the weekend for new shin pads for the hockey season. And I forgot how frustrating the in-store experience can be, not having the right size and going from store to store. Found myself whipping out the cell phone, and there it was. Doesn't matter, which store or reseller was fulfilling the order, but it was there, and I could have it delivered the next day. And we thought, well, that's it. We're getting out of the mall. And I think that's just really where we're starting to see e-commerce become such a differentiator for families. I think one of the challenges with many major sales, though, or any event around this is, we think of Black Friday as well, is separating what's genuinely new demand from purchases that maybe simply moved from July to June, or, cannibalizing future sales. How do you think about that as Amazon?
Yeah, look, I think one of the key design goals is that we're offering the best everyday value for money on the store. So, some customers are very used to, oh boy, it's a sale. I've got to go and run and find who's got the sale and move from sale to sale. What we're doing is really, the team is working extremely hard to make sure that you'll always find the best value for money on the store. So it's either going to be equal to or better than anyone else out there. And I think that's critical. So you can trust that the store is going to have that great value for money, and it's going to have that broad selection, and that we're going to get it to you, on time and as fast as we can.
And we've now had a good couple of weeks since the sale. When you look at the weeks after the event, what are you tracking? What tells you whether you've created that lasting habit, as you say, rather than maybe a 1 week sugar rush where you just, you're attracting that individual who's just always looking for the deal?
Yeah, I think if you look at that overall trend line, and the traction that we are seeing, you definitely, there is a large customer base that is finding that value and enjoying the experience, and they're coming back, and you can see that in the numbers. So even though you may get some of these spikes around sale events, and we run sales all the time, and different value propositions all the time, but despite all of that, there is this general solid growth of the number of customers coming to the store, and the customers coming back to the store, and then also through that is signing up to become a member of Prime, because there's just such great value for money in the offering.
And, another interesting element to this is you've got these flash deals. And I think
Yep.
for me at least, there's a fascinating bit of behavioral economics here, because you create a bit of scarcity, a bit of urgency, a ticking clock in the background, and suddenly a perfectly rational adult owns a second robot vacuum cleaner. Who knows? How did South African customers respond to your limited time deals? Were there
Oh, we
particular types of products where that urgency, had a real impact?
Yeah, again, we like to sort of excite and surprise our customers as well with some of the things that we offer. And I mean, one of these flash sales, we were running twice a day, sort of early in the morning and in the evening, and you definitely see these increases in interest. And so things like headphones, we sold a lot of headphones, Volcano Sleek series, Bluetooth headphones, and various other sort of brands, from time to time. So, getting really, really good traction from customers sort of finding these products. And I think they may have been considering this for some time. And this is just like, wow, finally I can afford to get that headphone or that product, when they see it on special.
Yeah, well, the cans, as I call them in the industry, is definitely something that's going to be bringing me back time and time again, and something that I'm going to be keeping a beady out for in the flash deals in the future. But I think we're a market that we're still learning about the way Prime Day works. Let's just talk about the economics of Prime, because at 59 Rand a month, or call it 399 Rand a year, I mean, South Africans really receive a lot of value. There's the shopping, there's the delivery benefits, there's Prime Video, there's all the other services. I would call it an aggressive price. So let me maybe put the uncomfortable question to you. Is that 59 Rand the sustainable economic price of Prime in South Africa? Or is it right now about saying, right, let's go and acquire customers? And is that pricing just designed to maybe buy a bit of market share and build that habit?
Michael, the price is not an unusual price. It's if you look at other countries where we operate, Egypt, Brazil, this is or India, this is a comparative, and we've looked at other emerging countries just to see, what is the pricing that works. But I think more importantly, we're just excited that the South African customer can experience Prime and the value for money that they can get from this. And I think it's very different to what they may be used to. Like, you're not accumulating points to get value or anything like that. You're getting your benefits from day one. So you sign up, you've got Prime Video, you've got this unlimited, fast, free shipping, and you're getting access to these, some of these amazing deals. So, yeah, I think it's just great value. And we're excited that, South Africans are under a lot of pressure, as you know. High fuel prices, there's a lot of stress, on financials for a lot of families. And we just want to bring that great value for money into their pockets. And we're seeing this. If you look, right around the country, and it goes back to one of the earlier points you were making about, with your daughters being able to access, these, different products and get a great price. But I think, remember that this is not everyone in South Africa has had that broad access to the selection and this value for money. And if you look at a heat map of where we're delivering, we deliver just about everywhere in the country, over 4,500 pickup points. All of a sudden you've got people in pretty, smaller towns around the country, smaller areas, and all of a sudden they can start experiencing that same selection that you have in Johannesburg or in Cape Town, same pricing, and also get this great delivery, to their local area.
Yeah, that is a game changer. Also, if you zoom out at a macroeconomic level, in terms of what that enables in those smaller town economies, but also in terms of resellers being able to access a much broader market. It's an interesting product as well. I just think in the South African context here, because you're bundling, and you mentioned you've got Prime, so you've got a streaming service, you've got retail, obviously you've got logistics. So it's, it really is, I think, from a value perspective, almost the killer app. But what are you seeing right now driving that? Is Prime Video maybe doing more of the heavy lifting than many people might assume, or is it too early to tell?
Look, I mean, first off, Prime is an all-in-one membership, and so there are lots of benefits. The delivery benefits are really key, and I think just South Africans love, or the feedback from our customers of that they love that, not having to think about the delivery and the delivery cost, not having to fill the basket. Hey, have I reached a tier? Hey, am I getting there? It's just, look, I know that I can deliver as many times or shop as many times as I want during the day. When I need it, I can place that order. And I think that really resonates and is driving a lot of the uptake. Obviously, Prime Video is very attractive. I mean, I'm currently watching The Farm with, it's such a great series.
With
With
Jeremy
Caleb
Clarkson.
and Jeremy
Yeah.
Clarkson, and
Yeah.
it's very entertaining. And there's so many cool series and movies and what have you available. So look, different customers will glob onto different areas, but I think once they start seeing the value across both and start interacting with all of the benefits, and there's even gaming, as well. We do have some gaming benefits where people can download games and start using those. So yeah, I think it's just exciting. I get very excited about South African shoppers starting to experience this and experience the value. And I think it just makes lives easier and so much more convenient for the average South African.
And if you look at all the high level surveys, yes, we have good e-commerce penetration, but there is still so much runway for growth. To your earlier
Of
point,
course.
bringing that to a broader spectrum of South Africans. Looking back and you kind of debrief on your first Prime Day, what were the biggest lessons learned from delivering your first ever Prime Day? And what will you be feeding back into the system as you go forward?
Look, I think you've heard me talk about, continually listening to customers. So we absolutely obsess about any feedback that we get, looking at what calls come into our contact center, here in Cape Town, looking at what sort of feedback we're getting, even anecdotally from our customers. So, it's just what selection do they want? What products do they want? Are there any sort of things that we can add into the store? Is probably one of the things that we spend a lot of time on. But we're continually also taking, a big part of the store. If you look worldwide, more than 60% of what is sold on the store is actually other businesses selling in our marketplace. And I think one of the exciting pieces has been the feedback from our sellers, because our sellers also can get that same Prime badge on their product, the same day delivery or next day delivery, the same unlimited delivery. So we've seen a real uptake there, and the feedback from the sellers has been fantastic there as well. But we'll continue to listen,
Absolutely.
very carefully to sellers and customers and shape,
Yeah.
and we're always looking for that feedback.
Yeah, because I think, one of the real tests of Amazon's long-term impact here surely has to be, also whether it creates South African e-commerce winners, not just South African consumers here of global brands. And I think there really is a massive opportunity for local sellers, if the product is good enough and if consumers want it, to partner with Amazon here. That said, I don't know if you can give us a glimpse into anything you might be adding to the range in future. Maybe discounted tickets to the rugby based on how we got the pricing wrong for that, I think, over the weekend.
Yeah, well, it was good to see the Springboks win. A nice convincing win, and hopefully that keeps going. But look, I think probably the area that we're continually listening, as I mentioned, and we're adding thousands of new products every week to the store, and so broadening out the selection, broadening out what we offer, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that our customers can expect is just more and more product that is available on the store with that fast, free delivery as part of their Prime membership.
Absolutely. Rob, thank you so much. And I think we're all a little happier after dispatching the English over the weekend. Great chat, great insight into the launch of Amazon Prime and Prime Day here on Business Talk. Take care.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for the discussion.